Well, my first experience with, I guess you could call it ESP, although I think that's pretty a hackneyed term at this point, but was when an aunt of mine, my mother's younger sister, had pneumonia and was confined to bed. And of course, her family and my family were sort of gathered around the bed, and it was like she was dying or something, you know. And it was like big pity party. But we all loved her. And one of my cousins, one of her daughters, was racing into their bedroom. And on the way, a contact lens fell out someplace in the carpet in the hallway. And they didn't have much money, and they'd paid a lot for her contact lenses. And it was like the hammer had dropped, you know, the mask of shame came over her. And my uncle and my aunt were sort of angry with her for not taking care of them. And I had this funny feeling that was sort of a mild euphoria. And I slid my chair back to the back of the bedroom and just allowed myself to kind of be quiet and still and almost meditative. And I thought, I have not experienced this before. There was something happening. And then I began to see sections of carpet sort of floating in front of my eyes. And then I saw this little glint. And I looked more closely, and it was obviously the contact lens. So what I was trying to do at that point was memorize the pattern in the carpet so that I could locate it and where it was in relation to the walls. You know, I knew this was real, so it doesn't hurt to have some cues. So while everyone was mourning the loss of the contact lens, I got up very quietly without saying anything, went out into the hallway, picked up the lens, I knew right where to go, and just sat down and didn't say anything, just held it in my hand. And I just said, well, when all of you are through with the laments, I think this is what you're looking for. Just held out my hand, and it's like, how did you do that? And my aunt was just, she just didn't believe in things like that. Being a good Roman Catholic, that, you know, pressed the wrong buttons. But anyway, and of course my cousin wanted to know, and my uncle said, well, you saw it when you know, practical. You saw it when you came in, you know, faker. No, I didn't. I saw it when I sat here and visualized it. But that's the first time I've ever had anything like that happen. And they thought it was so, and my cousins, too, the one who lost it, thought it was so cool. She wanted me to tell her the exact motions that I went through, the experience. She said, do you think you could use that to find other lost things? I said, well, of course you could. Absolutely. I think it's, you know, to me, it's real. This is real. And there are some sort of laws behind it somewhere. This is something people can learn. I absolutely know that. And she said, do you think you could teach me? I said, sure. I did. And for like a couple of weeks, she was running around her school teaching her classmates how to find lost objects and being quite successful with it. I loved it. I just loved it.
Who was this?
One of my cousins. Yeah. Actually, she's the one who died about a year ago. And who, when she died, called me on the phone twice.
How?
Well, the phone rang. Actually, I was in the shower when she died, but I knew it had happened. She had brain cancer. And I thought, okay, then I need to call my cousins, the other cousins, and her mother, my aunt. Her dad had died a number of years before, but so I came out to the living room first, and it was like a hole tore open in my reality was like looking through a window into another another universe. Well, heaven, I guess. And there she stood, smiling at me, grinning at me, and she looked as she had when, maybe 30 years younger. She was gorgeous. She looked like a Native American princess or something. She was beautiful. It was the black Irish in our family. And I told her how wonderful she looked. And as I looked around where she was, there were what looked like picnic tables over to my right, would be her left, and groups of people there, and some of whom I recognized. And she said, "Oh, the ones over there are our old friends." I said, "Yes, I remember," and I named the names, and she said, "Yes. And these are relatives of ours who've died." I said, "Yes, that's Grammy," and and she thought it was wonderful I could see them. I said, "Yes, and they're having a welcome home party for you." She said, "Yes, that's right." I said, "I'm so happy for you." And she let me know with thought that she kind of wanted me to keep an eye on her youngest son, who was really her caregiver through the last part of her days. Her husband couldn't handle the stress, what was going on. He was working too, but the pain was too great for him. So this young man, whom I think has many gifts, she wanted me to check in on him. And she was supposed to go to his graduation, and she was going to miss it. It's about a week after that. I said, "I'll go for you." And then the window closed. I think that's the best way to describe it, a window. And then the phone rang. I thought, okay. Well, I thought, well, maybe it's, someone in the family calling to tell me that she's gone. I picked up the phone and I looked at the number, and it had her name. It was her cell phone number. I thought, I'll just see if she answers, But it was just kind of a dead line. That's that's not a joke, but I guess it is. Anyway, and it happened one more time. And so this time I wrote the number down. I thought, I'm going to call this number. That's what I think she wants me to do. And so I called the number, and I just let it ring and let it ring. And her youngest son answered the phone, the one she wanted me to keep an eye out on, and told him who I was and that I'd just seen his mom. And he said, "Oh, it must be a pocket call." I said, "You take a look at that phone right now." He said, "You look for me in that phone. I am not there." He said, "You're right." I said, "Now do you believe it was your mom?" Yeah. So she asked me to do some things for you. Kind of keep an eye on you, and to go to your graduation in her place. That was a little bit of an adjustment for the rest of the family. They weren't quite sure that I'd had any of those experiences, but I'm past needing other people's validation or belief. It doesn't change what I experience. I've lived with this long enough. I know who I am, and I know these are gifts from the Spirit, and they are valid. And I take it very seriously. And when something comes, I know that there is responsibility attached to it. I always feel if I am picking something up, that there is a need for me to follow through with something or connect with something. That's always been that way. I learned that early on. It was like testing when I was beginning to pick up events at a distance. I was a geology student for a long time, and I used to collect articles from the newspaper and clipped them out, and I kept a notebook of geologic events, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and then one day the newspaper came. I opened it up. Here's this big quarter-page article about an earthquake in Alaska. I thought, well, that's interesting. Complete with interview from the sheriff of the small town and how large the quake was, locality. So I clipped it up and I taped it in my notebook. I kept waiting for it to show up on the news, on TV or radio. It was 2 weeks before it showed up. I thought, something's really wrong here. So I went back to my notebook and opened it up. What I clipped out was a full page, almost a full page ad. So I thought, right now I am feeling goose flesh all over me. It's affirmation. That was what I saw was real, but it was future. And it was probably their paper, not ours. And there were 3 things. Another one was while I was having one of my psychic naps, which I could come home from work and I would be so drowsy. And I got to the point where I realized there was no denying these naps. I could fight them all I wanted, and there was no way I could stay awake. And I would have psychic dreams or experiences for several years. And this one was, the first thing I could see were the tail numbers on a plane. I thought, why am I seeing this? And when I had these experiences, I could be conscious, ask myself questions. It was like lucid dreaming in some ways, except these weren't dreams. Whether or not they were past or future or sometimes present, I wouldn't know at the time. So I saw the numbers. The next thing I knew, I was inside the plane with everyone. It was a twin-engined commuter plane, commercial airline. And outside, I could see what looked like pine forest. The next thing I knew, it was going down. And it crashed into edge of the forest and some apartment houses. A lot of people were killed. And it was a week before it actually happened. And I debated, now that it had not happened yet, but I thought, can I accept the responsibility for calling the Federal Aviation Administration? They don't know who I am. Who am I? And I thought, I was trying to find my courage and said, what responsibility do I have here? And I really had to worry about those things. And I did nothing. And yes, the plane crashed. A lot of people were killed. And exactly the aerial view from helicopter is what I saw out of the window of the plane. And it was exactly the type of plane. And I just wept. I was given something to help, and I didn't follow through. I had to come to the place eventually where it's okay to say no. You can't always be there. I mean, circumstances can prevent it, but the third time was kind of a fun one. I was between jobs. I'd had enough with the jewelry business, and and the jewelry store was very kind to me. They gave me a beautiful book I've got down here still on seashells. Anyway, I told them not to worry. I'd have a job before the end of the day, and they thought, sure. And they called around and tried to make, use their influence to get some interviews for me. I went home, had a friend with me, looking at the want ads, and I thought, I want a job that's going to, maybe something that's going to earn some more money, maybe a commission job. And I just saw this ad for a salesman for car dealership, and I thought, okay, this was Eugene, Oregon, and my friend saw it too. we both saw it. So I just did my usual. I remember things visually. It's like taking mental pictures of things. And so I went down to the car dealership, and I said, I'm here to apply for your job that's you had advertised in the paper. And there were two of them in the office manager, and I think it was the owner. And they just sort of looked at me blankly. I said, what's wrong? I said, there's nothing in the paper today. I said, well, there absolutely was. I didn't clip it out, but I'll tell you word for word what it said. And they just sort of went white. And they said, yes, but the ad doesn't come out until tomorrow's paper. Would have been the Sunday paper. I said, oh. They said, but we don't feel that we can do anything but hire you. This is, it's like there's something going on here. I'm tingling all over again. Shall I end there?
Sure.
I mean, this could go on.